3, 2, 1, launch.
A Chinese destroyer abruptly surged forward in international waters, and a nearby formation of U.S. warships shifted to full alert in seconds. What began as a choreographed show of strength from Beijing rapidly hardened into a miscalculation that drew global scrutiny. This was no routine pass at sea, but a live test of nerve, technology, and disciplined command between two naval heavyweights. One side sought to demonstrate regional control through proximity and pressure. The other side needed only to hold position, apply doctrine, and remind observers who command blue water sea lanes. From high-altitude surveillance to deep ocean acoustics, from carrier decks to silent submarines, layered power unfolded without a single shot being fired. The tension built for nearly 7 hours, measured in bearings, ranges, and fuel states, rather than explosions. When it broke, it was not the United States that yielded. And the path to that outcome began long before the first radar sweep caught the surge. On the morning of June 14, 2025, the South China Sea's placid surface became an arena for escalation by directive. A Type 052D guided missile destroyer, steady at 18 knots, accelerated to 30 knots in less than 90 seconds under orders relayed from Beijing. The mission instruction was unambiguous. Intercept the American cruiser on patrol and force it to change course. The U.S. ship in question was USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser with SPY-1 radar, a robust combat system, and layered intercept options. Princeton was executing a lawful freedom of navigation patrol, more than 180 nautical miles from any Chinese baseline. The corridor carried trillions of dollars in annual trade, and the patrol existed to keep those lanes shared and open. For decades, such operations have deterred excessive maritime claims and normalized international passage. By pushing forward and closing, Beijing tried to raise the political price of that normalization.
Okay, where are you from? I'm from Point Pleasant, New Jersey. Oh, okay. And what is your occupation here? I'm an electronic.
Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, watchstanders fused radar tracks, AIS reports, and electronic support measures into a coherent picture. The destroyer's acceleration profile, bearing drift, and closest point of approach solutions signaled intent rather than coincidence. The tactical action officer elevated the threat posture, and the commanding officer directed general quarters with calm precision. Bulkheads thumped as sailors sprinted to their stations, sealed hatches, and verified the material condition of Zebra. The larger formation reacted like a single organism built over decades of doctrine and interoperability. USS Nimitz and her escorts, among them Arleigh Burke-class destroyers USS Chung-Hoon and USS Kidd, executed a textbook repositioning to a defense in-depth ring. The carrier tightened inside the protective screen as each escort ship took its assigned arc and sector responsibilities. Air operations remained green, but deck crews shifted emphasis from sortie generation to threat containment and rapid launch contingencies. Combat direction centers across the formation spun up identical playbooks, each tailored to local sensors, yet unified by standard procedures. Boarding ladders stayed quiet, but missile elevators, loaders, and fire controlmen moved in a practiced rhythm below decks. The geometry of the formation maximized overlapping fields of fire, while preserving sea room for maneuver. To the untrained eye, little seemed to change. To the trained eye, everything that mattered locked into place. Within seconds, the cooperative engagement capability linked the entire group's sensors into a single composite track picture. Princeton's SPY-1 contributions fused with the destroyer's SPY-1D and the carrier's long-range sensors into a single, latency-bounded air-surface mosaic. An E-2D Hawkeye's radar plots flowed through Link 16 and CEC gateways, eliminating blind zones and shrinking reaction timelines. The Chinese destroyers' kinematics were no longer a local problem. They were a shared targeting solution, visible to every console and cockpit. Fire control quality is tracked across the network with deterministic timing and integrity checks. Electronic support detections provided emissions geolocation and fingerprinting to confirm platform identity beyond visual range. The formation's hulls, aircraft, and antennas became a single, multifaceted weapon system with numerous apertures. That union denied surprise and turned proximity into a disadvantage for the approaching ship. Princeton's vertical launch cells sat ready with interceptors designed to reach far beyond the horizon. The SM-6 offered a long-range envelope against air threats and certain surface profiles. On the Chinese side, proximity promised video clips, headlines, and a narrative of regional control. The calculus assumed that driving close would produce a U.S. course change, a new fact at sea, and a domestic triumph. It discounted how the American formation converts individual apertures into a federated sensor. It discounted how predictable declared operations often beat theatrics in the court of global opinion. It discounted the distance at which precision can be applied without warning. Above all, it discounted how patience underwrites deterrence when paired with credible force. Those discounts compounded fast as the next phase moved from surface to air. From the carrier Shandong, deck crews launched J-15 fighters in an effort to seize the initiative overhead. Each departure rolled down a ski jump ramp, a legacy solution that imposes weight and fuel penalties compared with catapults. Lower fuel loads curtailed time on station and left narrower margins for afterburner dashes or evasive maneuvers. Reduced weapon loads limited the number and variety of stores that could be carried aloft. The air wing had to fly in close formation to conserve fuel and maintain mutual support, which increased detectability but reduced tactical flexibility. The J-15 airframe, derived from a Russian lineage, carried mass and drag that penalized climb rates and endurance from a short takeoff. Engines known for higher specific fuel consumption compounded the endurance problem in hot maritime air. The sortie looked large on television and small on the radar scopes that mattered. Hundreds of miles away, an E-2D established a racetrack orbit and began feeding precision track files to every U.S. ship and aircraft in range. Link 16 terminals stitched together a shared air picture so a single detection became everyone's detection. Fighting direction officers and airborne controllers assigned intercept geometries, sanitized corridors, and pushed threat calls with crisp brevity. F/A-18F crews monitored radar timelines while staying within tanker brackets that guaranteed recovery options. Air-to-air loadouts incorporated AIM-120 envelopes that outsticked anything the J-15s could safely. Electronic attack entered the fight, and the logic of the contest shifted again. EA-18G Growlers rolled in with ALQ-99 pods humming and emissions libraries queued. Their mission was not to destroy airplanes, but to disrupt the coherence of enemy systems, radars, data links, and missile seekers, jamming energy-saturated threat bands, generating false targets, and reducing range resolution across key nodes. Onshore radar sites that anchored the air picture reported intermittent drops, ghost returns, and degraded track quality. Surface platforms attempting to correlate tracks found their timelines slipping out of tolerance for weapon solutions. The Growlers did not break machines. They broke timelines and confidence. In minutes, radar superiority turned into radar uncertainty. The American response combined speed with discipline, rather than volume with drama. Controllers enforced EMCON plans that balanced detection with discretion, denying the opponent a clear view of signatures. Tankers cycled to keep fighters within comfortable margins while preserving the option to surge if the shot doctrine ever shifted. The carrier's deck cycles aligned with airborne fuel states to avoid brittle peaks and valleys. The formation's comms stayed sparse, timed, and encrypted, reducing the exploitable chatter that often blooms during tension. No missile left a rail because objectives were being met without kinetic action. The restraint preserved legal and political high ground while still demonstrating control. The lesson was simple. Escalation is optional when you own the clock. Under the surface, another contest unfolded where microphones matter more than cameras. A Chinese Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, which excels at operating quietly on batteries when properly handled, betrayed itself through lapses in noise discipline. Sharp turns, transient cavitation, and imperfect speed control produced acoustic signatures that modern arrays can classify. A US P-8A Poseidon seeded a pattern of sonobuoys, processed returns through multi-static algorithms, and correlated them with passive detections. Helicopters equipped with dipping sonar refined holds and preserved contact continuity over water. Submarine warfare punishes imprecision faster than any other domain. The time from a weapon release to impact in a positive control torpedo shot measures in seconds at the ranges involved. If the contact solution is steady, the firing solution is simple. If the contact solution wobbles, the firing solution falls apart. The U.S. side held long, steady tracks that would have satisfied any tactical manual. The Chinese boat, by contrast, found itself bracketed by buoys and geometry rather than steel. The number of hulls could not compensate for a brittle acoustic profile in a field where silence is a matter of survival. The lesson was as old as sonar and as fresh as new processor code. Undersea dominance accrues to the side that hears first and moves last. The interplay of layers, airborne ISR, surface screen, electronic attack, and undersea surveillance created a lattice rather than a stack. If one sensor missed, another caught. If one node degraded, redundancy filled the gap. The result was not invulnerability, but resilience, a word that matters more than superiority in modern combat systems. Resilience let commanders keep options open without gambling on a single point of failure. It allowed them to run a long, quiet game that did not depend on an opponent's mistake. It let them convert time into leverage rather than fuel into panic. Most importantly, it kept every decision reversible until it was no longer necessary. At the midpoint of the standoff, Nimitz executed a high-tempo deck evolution designed to signal capacity without crossing a line. In a tightly choreographed window, the carrier launched and recovered waves of FA-18 and EA-18Gs at a pace that punished errors and rewarded repetition. Each catapult shot, each trap, each taxi was a data point of competence under pressure. The deck crews rotated through precisely timed cycles, moving with the economy of motion that separates practice teams from rehearsals. Air Boss and Mini Boss orchestrated a constant ballet of steel, hydraulics, and humans, with safety nets that never had to be tested. Then came the quietest and loudest moment of the day. A Virginia-class attack submarine surfaced 6 nautical miles abeam of Shandong, executed its checks, and returned below as quickly as prudence allowed. The maneuver said what no press release could. "We have been here, and you did not know." 8 days of undetected presence compressed into a few minutes of visible proof. No sonar range, no maritime patrol track, and no escort screen had prevented that proximity. In a shooting war, that geometry could have translated into unanswerable questions about survivability for a capital ship. In a standoff, it translated into a psychological weight that hung over every subsequent decision. Control sometimes announces itself with silence breaking the surface. The air domain, still the most dynamic part of the encounter, continued to tilt against the fuel margins and the degraded picture facing the J-15s. Every orbit ticked down internal fuel loads toward bingo, and every jamming pulse eroded confidence in track quality. Fighters forced to fly in close formation to conserve fuel were easier to spot and bracket. Tanking options near the carrier conflicted with the need to maintain a buffer against interception. Aircrew faced an unenviable choice between pressing a degraded picture or conserving their reserves for safety, not ambition. Several jets made the conservative call and returned with low fuel. A proper decision in peacetime, but a costly one in war. The absence of missiles told a story more clearly than contrails would have. Systems and time beat bravado and proximity. On the surface, Chinese ships found their maneuver space sculpted by American geometry rather than blocked by American hulls. Intercepts and shadowing kept them outside weapon envelopes without offering a pretext for collision narratives. Every new heading created a new math problem solved instantly on American consoles via the federated picture. Every radar ping produced an emission record added to a growing library. Attempts to change the pace of the encounter ran up against the time constraints of fuel, crew endurance, and orders from ashore. The most effective threat is a weapon you never have to mention because everyone knows it is there. The best message is a track plot that never budges for the wrong reasons. The right audience is not social media, but command and control on the other side. Strategically, the episode reset expectations about costs and benefits. Pushing close delivered no concession and invited technical embarrassment. Attempting to seize a narrative through proximity collided with a reality written by fuel, physics, and federated sensors. The United States demonstrated that it can apply pressure without resorting to pyrotechnics and achieve its objectives without casualties. It validated that patience, when paired with preparation, inflicts the kind of defeat that leaves fewer scars and more profound lessons to learn. It demonstrated to allies and competitors that professional habits, rather than emotional outbursts, can uphold norms. It reminded planners everywhere that escalation is a choice, not a law of motion. The ocean, indifferent as ever, favored the side that treated it as a medium rather than a stage. In the aftermath, administrators of training pipelines will tune syllabi rather than rhetoric. Growler crews will review waveform performance by time and sector and update loadouts accordingly. Hawkeye crews will refine control scripts for fuel-constrained opponents and rehearse tanker choreography even more tightly. Surface warfare officers will replay screen maneuvers and watch for micro-gaps that never mattered, but might someday. Submariners will add another quiet story to the vault of examples they cannot cite, but always use. Commanders will walk wardrooms through the principles that made the day uneventful for the right reasons. Lawyers will update briefings that explain how declared intent and consistent execution protect legitimacy. The fleet will move on, slightly better than it was. The wider world took a simpler message to heart. The sea lanes remain open when those who use them are willing to defend customs with calm power. Coercion by proximity fails when endurance, integration, and discipline sit across the table. The side that lives inside the clock and the map writes the outcome that others must explain. The absence of missile smoke does not mean the absence of victory. The camera cannot film a composite track, a latency budget, or a noise floor, but those win days more often than flashes do. The scoreboard, if one insists, showed unchanged courses and reinforced norms. The cost ledger showed burned fuel, learned lessons, and no funerals. In strategy, those numbers matter more than slogans. And that is the real story behind the headline. A push met by a plan, a show met by a system, and a day saved by sailors who treat excellence as routine. If you like our content, go ahead and like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. We're trying to reach 10 subscribers before the end of 2025. Get yourself involved.